Hi, Ketan. Thanks for speaking to ASAP Art. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your film?
I'm a filmmaker, sound designer, sound artist, and yeah, I mean it's like a hyphenated work practice. So this film, sound work, the film exhibition, and some work as an educator as well. Uh, yeah, and I'm based out of New Delhi. Okay, that's also where I grew up. I don't really have any formal education in film or the arts. Yeah, and this film is a part of a larger project that we did with the collective that I belong to or work with called Kaddukkas, which works under Lightcube, the film society that we ran for 10, 12 years before this. The project itself is called the Mapmaker from Baghdad, which is an attempt to create like an open archive for which we like wrote a fiction and use that as an inspiration to shoot around uh, Mumbai. It's the all the impressions of cinema that are present around the city, and also all the people behind the scenes or people that are otherwise raised or are not unrepresented from general film history, which includes like people who worked on films. We interviewed about 22 people uh, as part of this shoot and also shot on the streets a lot. And the project was always intended to be presented as an interactive website. And with the website, their intention was to give this material to about six filmmakers with the fiction of each episode and just ask them to make a film without actually any specific instructions. Fortunately, I mean, I was part of the three-person production team, but I also got the chance to make one of the episodes. Yeah, and then we had about, I think, four or five invited filmmakers. And yeah, I mean, the three of us also made films. And yeah, this ended up being the first episode in that sequence. Yeah, and then my own intention was to given that other people were coming without the context of this production. My intention really was to somehow put impressions of that experience of being on that shoot in Mumbai for like 40 odd days over two different trips. Being on the street, taking heavy transport possible, like walking around, sometimes from 5 a.m. till like 1 a.m. the next day. So just impressions of that day with the fiction. But I feel like the fiction was also to some extent personalized, at least in terms of sensation, how it, or how I feel about it.
So, you brought up your collective Kaddukkas, and I was actually curious about this process of collaboration and how that works. So, I was wondering if you could share a bit about how that maybe influenced the language of the film as well, because we do see other members and the process of filming itself and your process of research.
Yeah, I think because as the collective was also formalized after the Mapmaker from Baghdad was over. This process of the production, the collaborative production became in a way the primer or the Bible to what we wanted the collective to be like. When we look back at it, uh, so even if you see the other films, sometimes it can become difficult to differentiate which film you're watching because a lot of them use similar images. And then it's also almost impossible to really, even for us to decipher who actually shot which image because multiple devices were being used and we had a camera, but we were also all shooting on phones. Feel like the character who will inspired from the real Rafique Raat, I mean, inspired mostly in name and cinephilia, but the character itself really has impressions of all of our consciousnesses. I mean, at first, Hanuj and Gaurav who wrote the fiction, but then, I mean, at least for me, very strongly because then I was also on ground trying to almost at first pretend to be Rafiq and then almost feeling like it. And then so the character within the project in a way is like that sign or the I mean it sounds too commercial, but like the product of that collective work.
So there's a way in which the film is also commenting on this disjunct between what is the labor behind filmmaking and then the fantasy of cinema and the worlds that it sort of creates. So can you share a bit about how you chose to treat the film as a hybrid between fiction and non-fiction? And in your Q&A yesterday, you were talking about how fiction becomes a provocation,
Yeah.
but that's not the story in
Yeah.
a way. So can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, by fiction being the provocation, I meant like this process of inviting filmmakers, but giving them the fiction, giving them the material in a way. We created like separate folders for all of them. I mean, there's also presentation that we did at IFA last year, who provided the grant for the project, where we did actually show those Excel sheets and the folders that were provided for the filmmakers, because again, that's like part of, for us, that's the behind the scenes process of how these films are made. So in that process, the fiction, at least the intention is for it to only be a provocation, as that's where you begin and not where you finish. And with this episode with my film also, the intention was, at first the intention was to use um, have like record, like translate, because the text was in English, to translate it into Hindi, then simplify it, shorten it, do a voiceover so that I have something to make the film on, because I had these fragments that I wanted to create, but wasn't sure how they come together. So I used the voiceovers to find the flow, and then it just made too much sense. Even though it wasn't, it was still like, to me, it was like a secondary thing. The fragments are in some ways providing a different element of that experience, but also the learnings from it, like you're saying, with the impressions of cinema that are left from the city, but also the things that coexist within with cinema.
Coming to the city, I felt that it's an interesting relationship that's there because it's almost like a love hate relationship that I felt in the film. How do you relate to that city? Also, given it's sort of, since you are coming from that cinephilia, I mean, Bombay as a city with this rich history of film.
I mean, I'm really glad you felt that way. I don't know if that was translating into the film. I don't think it was the intention to translate it into the film, but it's definitely how I feel about Mumbai. Like as an individual, I don't really have any affliction, if that's the right word, to in any sort of love or longing towards this city that produces cinema. But I, yeah, and just the things I've done over the years, I just happened to visit a few times, and every time it was like, because of the novelty, it was a very good experience for me. But the process of the shoot, I think definitely it just felt like I had experienced the whole city or everything that it had to offer. So it became like very physically tiring always to be in that city, to the extent where every time I didn't have to go out for the shoot, I just did not want to go out. I think it's a lot less extreme in how it's felt, like the feelings about the city. It's neither a lot of love or a lot of hate. I think maybe it's this all indifference. It's definitely, I think that there's a lot of admiration because of all that it's offered to me, and all that I learned through the process of this project and the production that we undertook.
Since you're also a sound designer, I wanted to know a bit about how you approach sound design in the film.
Actually, some of this I realized just yesterday, because this is also my first time, or maybe the first time audience has seen the film together. Was the realization that most of the other sound work that I've done has, a lot of it has used recordings and my own recordings as well. With this particular film, I don't think I used any like effects or any Foley work at all. It was almost entirely the sound recordings we have from the shoot itself, which is on location. So it's there's no finish, there's no polish, there's always a lot of noise. You're never just cheering one thing. To me, even while making it, I think the process of finding it, is it finished, was a little difficult or confusing for me because didn't feel like the sound was dense enough. Um, but then I just like kept also kept feeling that that's what this needs, the space, the slowness, which I also feel every time I watch it, that it's sometimes taking too long to go ahead, but end up just enjoying the series of it.
Some of the film is coming from the cinephilic imagination, which is at work at the film. Can you tell us about approaching forms of archiving through cinephilia?
Because I think cinema itself, once it's created or any kind of image, like even in the Q&A yesterday, I think that's what maybe started with, was referring to all of our films as working with archives, and that's what Asmita also said, that she didn't realize it, but I guess in some ways all images do become that. Um, yeah, so I mean, part of it was how archives are thought of as something of the past. This archives are thought of as something that's fixed or complete. And I think some of our realization were that practically impossible to call anything a complete or a fixed archive, which like made me like come to this realization again and again on during this shoots, that I mean the city itself exists as this museum almost, which is, I mean, showing you its own history, present and past, maybe some of its own future. So the intention with using all of this to present as an open archive comes in with the design of the website itself, because there's you have, and it's called the Mapmaker. So there are maps. So these are not actual maps of Bombay, but like cognitive maps that have been designed, and you have things is popping alive on all of these pages, something new that you discover. Obviously, there's some arrangement or placement that you have must see while designing this, but the intention behind that design is so that there's no technically there's no linearity. I mean, the episodes have numbers, there are other things, there are interviews, but there's no real preference behind which interview. Like, I mean, even though there is the character is called Rafique Raat, and one of the interviews is with the actual Rafique Baghdadi, who's like a brilliant writer, national award-winning writer on film. Uh, but within the project, he's also just one of the people who have inspired and like very generously provided their own, uh, not just their story, their own experiences in words and with their time. And though it's almost a, there's an idea of randomness that we try to induce with the website as to what you discover. Yeah, so the website itself is like an open grid where you can just scroll up and down, and sometimes 2 or 3 pages further than you wanted to, and never maybe intentionally go to more pages than the usual home and about and those things. And there's space on the website for people to just add to it, which obviously we've not had a lot since the process of making the project was also in a way exhausting enough that we've not formally released it yet. Like we presented it once at the at an IFA exhibition with other projects, and I also did like a really beautiful video on that Instagram about it. So in those sense, the website is the link is live, uh, but we've not done any formal events or invited people to see it other than those faces. I mean, we did the Clarity seminars earlier this year. That went quite well. We're also hoping to perhaps make that an annual thing in Delhi, because this year it had some struggles, given that people are just not familiar with this seminars thing in India, and we can't announce films, so that becomes a difficult place. But now we have like a very interesting project called the Six Star Games, for which we did an open call, and we have like 5 artists from South Asia or from South Asian origins that we are actually have started working with. So it's like a 5 month workshop process that we are undertaking with them, and all 5 of them create one by one um, in a way that it becomes like a series of ornamented Chinese whispers where one influences the other. And before anything becomes this one called Persistent Visions by Erika Tam. And which now we've already seen. We had a session with Erika Tam and the artist. Um, yeah, so that is what we are undertaking right now. Kaddukkas is also going to produce a lot of work simultaneously. We've already done the shoot part of this process of responses. We are also going to offer one object to every artist, and then all of this culminates in an exhibition next year at Neighbor, the gallery in Trivandrum. Yeah, which is about like a 2 week exhibition planned last week of January, first week of Feb.
Okay, thank you so much.